Hey guys and girls, non-binary squirrels, and welcome to podcast. I don't like. How do you say the word? It's more but I don't know. I don't know how to spell So anyway, this is the first episode, and I'm feeling super awkward because I'm just sat in a room talking to myself, and the echo is probably ridiculous. I can hear an echo already, and I'm just hearing it in my own ears. But really, the awkwardness is one, I'm sat talking to myself because you know what? I want to do a podcast for a number of different reasons. One, because I don't like sitting at home for longer than an hour and not doing anything because I'm fucking weird. Such a weird person. But also, I like talking. Like, I need to leave stuff alone. I'm messing about with lights and there's dust on there. And I like talking. And I like communicating, and I guess I like sharing my thoughts and ideas, whether that's ridiculous ideas or just like more intellectual thoughts. Don't come here for intellectual thoughts. If you're here for the intellectual thoughts, you're going to be sorely disappointed. It's not what it's going to be. This is just going to be essentially a weekly or a twice weekly podcast, just where I share my thoughts and ideas and experiences. And I'm going to talk as if I'm just talking to one person. So if you're listening to this, you're that one person. No one's going to be sat around in a group listening to this. That'd be a ridiculous thing to do. But why am I starting the podcast? I guess one of the reasons is because I like to talk. And another reason is I don't like to be sat around not doing anything. A third reason is, I don't know, I guess I like to entertain people, but I don't know. Do you need a big reason? Like, do you need a reason to start a podcast other than I just like talking? And maybe some people might like to listen to me. I don't know. Like, how much of a reason do you need to set up a ring light, set up a tripod with your camera, and a couple of moody lights behind you like you're in some sort of Thai massage place? You're not going to get a happy ending here, unfortunately. This isn't my first podcast, by the way. This is probably my 15th podcast that I've started. I'm awful at this, right? I'll start a project and I won't finish it, or I won't continue to do it long enough. And I'm full of excitement at the beginning and can't wait to get it started. But then, I don't know, I guess that dopamine sort of dribbles out, and those happy feelings go, and then you're just left with, well, I need to continue to do this, but it doesn't look like anyone's listening. Because that's another part of the problem, isn't it? It's like, whenever you start something like this, it takes a while for people to sort of find you, and whether that's, you're doing like a audio podcast, there's no instant gratification, there's no instant feedback, which I think, I don't know, maybe we're in a generation, or I'm in a generation where that's what we need. But I am going to endeavour to continue doing this podcast, just because when I think it's helpful, I think, here's a good reason for me to do a podcast. It's important that I fucking share my feelings. Like, I don't do therapy, but if I was to do therapy, like, I've done it. But do you know what? I'm going to lift my leg up and over this camera. Oh, there we go. You just saw my boot in your face. I have done therapy before, but what I found most helpful about it was just being able to talk and just being able to share my feelings and thoughts. Now, the good thing about therapy is you get challenged. They'll be like, I'm not sure that's a positive way to think about it. And it's like, okay, well, shit, my fucking battery is dying already on this phone. Right. How am I going to sort this out and for it to work? See? Completely unprofessional, completely not prepared. Right, is that going to work? I don't know if that's working. It might be working. Who knows at this point? But anyway, it says I've got 20% left, so I probably won't go longer than 20% battery. Yeah, so the good thing about therapy is when you talk and you're sort of expressing how you're feeling, you've got a therapist. Well, is it good? You've got a therapist there saying, I'm not sure that's a positive way to look at things, and maybe you need to think of it like this and think of it like that, and you get challenged. That can be good if it's negative, but also it's a pain in the fucking ass, isn't it? Like if you're like, oh, the rest of the world are assholes, and I'm actually the same one, and then the therapist is like, well, actually, Lyndon, that doesn't seem to be true. It's like, well, I'm not sure if that's helpful to hear that. I like to be delusional, as we all do a lot of the time, right? You like to think in your own mind, and you like to sort of have your own say. I have done podcasts with other people before. The good thing about doing a solo podcast, I think, is I'm not waiting for the other person to say something, and if they fuck it up, or if they can't respond, or they're not responding to what I'm saying, like everything lands on me. That's good and that's bad though, right? It's like, it's positive because it means I'm in control of it going wrong, and if it goes wrong, it lands on me and I can deal with that. But that also means that if it all goes wrong and it's bad, it's on my shoulders as well, which it's not fucking hard though, is it? Oh, I need to try and get comfy. I'm still recovering from an operation on my stomach. I'll talk about that in another episode. I'm not fucking getting into that now. It's boring. I've done nothing but fucking talk about this fucking operation I had for fucking 2 months now. Yeah, so it's positive in a sense that I'm doing it on my own because everything lands on me. But it's not hard. It's not like working down a mine shaft or anything like that, like breaking rocks or trying to fucking heave coal into a fucking, I don't know how they do it. It's all machine now, I guess. Even if people are mining coal, I don't know. Do people mine coal anymore? Sorry, I just got distracted. As I do, I get distracted a lot by a fly just landing on the ring light and be like, oh, I like that light. Oh, I don't know. I think flies do that. But yeah, so it's not hard. It's not like thoracic surgery or anything like that. It's just a podcast. It's just me filming myself and popping it up on the internet. Although that's making it seem less than it is, because actually you need to edit it. And then if you want it to go any further than just 2 or 3 people listening, like a month or a week, because like you could do like and people they do like a non-visual podcast, which is essentially, that's how podcasts started. But then how do you promote that podcast? You can't really, like, you can write about it and share a link, but it's not really going to grab people's attention. And if I want people to listen, I need to be able to promote it. So the video podcast is probably the next best thing, but can't speak English though out of this mouth hole. But it's the next best thing, isn't it? It's being able to like film this and then cut it up into clips and promote it and put it on other places like YouTube Shorts and TikTok, which, you might be seeing this short on somewhere and be like, oh, fucking fly. You won't be doing that. That was me that did that. But yeah, do you know what? There are benefits, I think, from doing it with another person as well, because you get instant feedback, whether it was good or whether it was bad, or whether you said something that was just like really bad. Let's say you said something that was just gross or, isn't going to be received well, and they're like, oh, I think we should edit that bit out or cut that bit out. Or, oh, they challenge what you're saying, when now I'm just sat here on my own just with a fly, my first listener and viewer. I don't know if they can, do flies hear? They can see, they can obviously see. I don't know if they've got ears. I think they sense vibrations. I don't know. I'm not a fly person. I'm not Attenborough. I know nothing about flies, to be honest. I saw the film Fly with Jeff Goldblum. That was a good film. I remember that film. It was gross, but it was a good film. I remember bits of him were falling off. Like, I'm sure his ear fell off at one point. There was a lot of like putty stuff that was falling off of him, bless him. But if you haven't seen that film and you're from a younger generation, go and see that film. Or if you're from an older generation and you've never seen that film, what the hell are you doing? But yeah, go and check it out. The premise of the film is he's a scientist and his DNA gets mixed with the DNA of a fly and he turns into a giant fly. It's mental. Really and truthfully, if you were just sent that as a script and you're like, this is what happens, why are you making that? That's mental. That makes very little sense. It's better visually that it was a fly than a giraffe. And if you've seen the film, you'll know that's ridiculous because where's a giraffe going to happen across him and run into the... So I have to explain now what happens in the film. So he is creating, he's a scientist, he's creating this teleportation device that can teleport live matter from one like chamber into another chamber, and he puts himself in this chamber and it sends him and reanimates him or puts all of his stuff from here over to here. But what happens is he doesn't realise there's a fly gets in there as well. So when it reanimates him, he doesn't realise, but the fly's DNA is inside him and he starts to transform over time into this fly. And he starts to behave like a fly and he turns into it and ends up looking like a fly. Which again, sounds fucking mental because it is mental. I've just realised I'm looking at my image on the screen. I'm not looking at the camera or the lens. So to you, I could just be looking off like I've got lazy eyes. I'm not. I haven't got lazy eyes. I'm just not very good on camera. And that's fine. It's a podcast. What are you going to do? Feel free to not listen or watch. Go somewhere else. In fact, definitely 100% go somewhere else. But yeah, so the idea that there's just going to be a giraffe walking about his laboratory and because he couldn't get in that chamber with a giraffe, first of all. One, it's not big enough. And two, he'd definitely notice it's not in there and would say to himself, oh, this might not be a good idea. But he doesn't know that the fly's in there. That's really dangerous, isn't it? That's like some Wuhan lab shit. Like coronavirus, well, it's not. It's nothing, anything like that. But it's like, where's the lab security that there's just flies going about? And surely he would have thought about that. Well, what's going to happen if there's something else in there that's going to mix with my DNA? And if a fly could get in there, then surely there's other bacteria. What if he's eating his lunch and there's like a little bit of bacteria? And then when he gets in there, any bacteria that's on his skin will now be taken. And we're covered in bacteria, aren't we? We're covered in little fucking bugs and like there's supposedly these little creatures that live on our fucking eyelashes. Like, that blows my mind. Like, imagine that. Imagine there's like a couple of little tribes. They're probably warring as well. They hate each other. They probably never travel across the bridge of the nose. Do you know sometimes you get a little itch on the bridge of your nose? I reckon that's where they're travelling across to like, I don't know, what would they do? Trade with each other. We've got some fish. Okay, we've got iron. We've been smelting iron. Okay, civilization on your eyelashes obviously isn't that developed. They're not like the Iron Age or Stone Age ape or anything like that. I don't know. Who knows what they are? But anyway, when he gets transported from one place to another place, all of these other bacteria and all these other life forms that are living on you would then be melded and moulded back into you, into that life form. So surely he'd start changing into all of those things, wouldn't he? I don't know. That's the problem, isn't it, with cinema and stories, is you have to suspend reality for it to work. Because if you ask too many questions, like me and my partner have started watching Lost again. I've watched it before, but she's never watched it. And she's doing this thing at the moment. It makes me laugh. But she does this thing where she's like, how come everyone's wearing, like, they're on this tropical island and it's really sunny. Why is everyone wearing fucking jeans? You take those jeans off. And I was like, yeah, you'd probably cut them into shorts, if anything. But yeah, none of it makes sense. Or how come everyone's makeup looks good and their hair looks good? Or why the men never got like giant beards? Like there are some TV shows and films where they do that. Like, do you remember Castaway with what's that dude's name? Forrest Gump. Why can't I? Do you know when you have a brain fart and it's like, I should easily be able to access that memory. Forrest, Tom Hanks, there you go, big. Yeah, on Castaway, he had a big beard and stuff, didn't he? But they'll never be able to make everything, um, to life and accurate and representing reality. Otherwise, it would just be weird and boring. Like, you'd be watching like a soap opera, and like Jenny would be like, "Oh, I've just got to go to the toilet. Oh, I've got a bad belly, and oh, my period started, Rob." And do you know what I mean? Like, the everyday mundane bits of life just aren't. They're not interesting to people. That we live those lives. We don't want to see other people living those lives. Like, you in the soap opera, it never cuts to a shot, and it's just some guy sat there scrolling on his phone for half an hour, because that would be a ridiculous episode. But that is a lot of our life. Or sleeping. Like, unless something crazy happens, you never see. I don't know. Do soap operas even happen anymore? In the UK, I think we. Sorry, I've got the burps. In the UK, I think we still have like EastEnders and Coronation Street. And I guess in other places in like America and stuff, they probably have soap operas. I don't know if soap operas even like popular anymore. Who knows? I don't really care whether they are or not, to be honest. But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so this idea that if I'm doing a solo podcast, I'm not going to know that I've said anything really wrong or fucked up until someone sends me a comment or a message saying, "Oh, I didn't like that you said that." I've written some notes down. It doesn't sound like any of this is noted, because it's nonsense, to be honest, but there's a couple of bits that I wanted to make sure that I sort of covered. Yeah, and it's, so if I do say anything that's going to offend anyone, it's like, well, I'm going to have to wait for someone to comment on a TikTok, or comment on the YouTube, or you can comment on Spotify podcast now, which is where this is going to be as a audio podcast. And I don't know, that's when they'll be said, "Oh, that thing that you said is really fucking off colour. You shouldn't have said that." But here's the other thing as well. Then you have to debate with yourself: do I read the comments? Is it going to be helpful to read comments? Because sometimes it'd be nice, like you'll read a comment and it'll be, "Oh, see, I've got an itch now. One of those little bugs has managed to travel down to my nose looking for other resources, and I just watch him and his party out." See, it'd be like crawling up a giant mountain, and then something just comes along and swipes you like a storm or something, or a giant finger. Yeah, I don't know how helpful reading the comments are, because you will get like nice comments, be like, "Oh, I like what you're doing there," or that bit made me laugh," or "I enjoy your stupid bald face, bald head, and face like an old boot." And then there'll be negative comments and be like, "Oh, you're an arsehole. This is the worst podcast I've ever seen." That's not true. I've seen awful podcasts. Even as bad as this is not the worst. So I'm doing okay, at least by my estimation. And it's like, I'm not sure it's good for you though, because here's the thing as well. As humans, we focus on the negative. Like, I could get like 10 positive comments and then one negative, and I'll be like, focus on that one. That's the important one. And then it'll be in my head, and it'll be like, "Oh, I feel shit about that," or what should I do now? And all this or other sort of stuff. And it's like, actually, it doesn't really matter. Why am I doing it? That's the question that needs to be asked, that I asked at the beginning. And I think if I do it for me first, and the enjoyment of actually sat here and chatting and just sharing my thoughts, then I've done my job. And if I share those things to promote it, so that maybe a couple of other people might be interested in watching or listening, then it doesn't really matter. It's not really a massive deal. It's not like I'm getting paid to do this, or that I'm doing it as a job, or I have a boss a boss. I don't know why I said it like that. I don't. This isn't. I'm not beholden to anyone to do this. I don't work for Spotify or YouTube. So this is generally just something that I want to do. So worrying what people think really shouldn't matter, but it does. And it does because I'm now dribbling snot out my nose for some reason. Isn't it weird? You can sit there and your face is bone dry until you start recording, and it's probably the entrails of the species that I just wiped out. Um, this is one of those. What was I saying? Oh yeah, right. Let me go to my notes. So there is one way that I can sort of tell that I'm not going to be giving up on this anytime soon. Well, there's two reasons. One, I'm doing another podcast with my children. It's called Would You Father? And essentially it's me and my two boys asking each other would you rather questions and just chatting and finding out why we think what we think and that sort of stuff. And they're only 5 and 7. They're almost 6 and 8. That's how numbers work. They go up numerically. And it's fun. It's silly. It's like wrangling a bag of cats at the moment because they're so young and trying to keep their attention on what they're doing for a short amount of time because it's not very long. They're like, I think they're like about 7 or 8 minutes long as episodes go because all three of us get a turn to do a would you rather and then everyone else chooses and then explains why they chose their decision. So if you haven't listened to that, go and check it out. You might like it. The good thing about doing that with them is there's the cute factor, right? Because they're kids, and it's not like a sweatshop where I'm like, right, come on, kids, we got to pump out some material here to do clips and stuff. But they've been like, I've done some stuff with them previously, and they've been getting on my case about doing it, and they're like, come on, Dad, can we do a podcast? Can we do a podcast? And I'm like, what happened previously is we did it for a while, and then they were sort of thinking, well, they lost interest in it after a few episodes. And it's like, you can't do that with podcast kids or YouTube videos. You can't just do that because then people are expecting to see it. And if you're going to produce content for people, you have to keep that going. And I think they understand that a little bit more now because like they watch stuff on YouTube and they've seen like podcast stuff. So I've said to them, you know, if you like watching so and so and then they just stopped, how would you feel? And my eldest was like, yeah, I wouldn't like that because I like seeing their videos. And I'm like, well, that's how people might feel if we stop. So if we decide to do this, we need to continue doing it. And he was like, oh, I understand that, then we'll do it. And I was like, okay, but you need to stick to it. So what I've done is I'm now using an app to record and edit and like help with the clips and it's all the back end that you're not interested in probably unless you do podcasts yourself is in this app that I'm going to use or that I am using. And the free version of it doesn't give you access to practically anything. So I've had to pay for it and it's not cheap. It's expensive because if I'm going to produce it, I want it to look half decent and I want it to be okay. Like the me chatting bit, I'm going to get better with that over time. But the actual back end production needs to be as good as it can be. So I've spent money on that so that we can use it together and I can use it separately for my podcast. And yeah, and that I guess that's coming out of my own pocket. So I have to justify in my mind, why would I spend money on that every month? And the only way I can justify doing that is if I actually do what I said I was setting out to do, which is the podcast. So that hopefully is going to give me a reason to not just go, oh, I can't be bothered to do it this week and then stop doing it. So there's that should help. But yeah, they've been bugging me to do it, so I can't really quit. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I haven't really explained why, other than why does anyone do anything online? You know, they want someone to hear them or see them and go, oh, okay, yeah, that's entertaining or that's education. You won't get educated listening to my show, to be honest. But it might be good for me to just try and do something longer term and finish a project. There's no finishing a podcast though, is there? You just continue to do it. Unless it's literally, I'm going to analyse every episode of The Sopranos. And when you get to the end of the episodes, you've done the podcast. That is the podcast. But there isn't really a natural end to it, is there? But I don't know. It's like I listen to podcasts myself. That's one of the reasons I guess I'm doing it, because I like to consume podcasts. So I think maybe I've got things to say. Not in this episode. This is nonsense. And it will be nonsense for a while. But I think aside from the back end stuff and paying for the podcast equipment, one of the other things that I need is a microphone, because this is awful sound quality because I'm just using my phone's microphone, the internal mic. So it's going to be really bad sound quality. But again, I'm going to need to buy a microphone for that. I've got some lighting equipment and that's sort of stuff that I can use and I'm using. But with the microphone, I'm going to have to wait a while because I can't be shelling out all of this money like it's like money's nothing, because cost of living crisis and all that shit. Right. Anyway, what else do I want to say? I think we'll call it quits now. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, give it a thumbs up or whatever else you do.